My whole life, I'd lived like a man.
Even the feminine looking type business actually came from a very masculine energy.
In my life, I'd witnessed one parent be a victim.
I have had the best parents.
The minute something hard happened again, I would crumble.
Why am I so yellow?
How you feel about yourself is ultimately what is going to manifest in your exterior.
Imposter syndrome is one of the biggest things that people struggle with.
Find out what your why is.
I feel like I'm doing a lot, but then I'm not doing enough.
Instead of powering over people, you're powering to people.
Who the hell do I think I am?
You're so busy looking at everything else and you're not thinking about how it feels to you.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Money Honey podcast with me, your host, Rosalia Lazzarettilli. I am always looking forward to these times of the month. I record all these episodes once a month. I am back to back with episodes because I get to basically shut my job away for just a day, for just one day, even though it's piling up. I can already see it, but I just, put it to one side and I get to focus on speaking to some truly sensational money honeys, whether they are in property, in finance, construction, in the spiritual world, whatever walks of life. They always have like a link back to maybe property or construction or business, right? It's called the Money Honey because it's about women feeling empowered to talk about money. And that's something that I really wanted to make so safe, like a really safe space for us to not feel like we're boasting or we're too loud or too small or too big. And this is a place of everyone's journey counts. I get this a lot where people are like, oh, I'd love to come on the Money Honey one day when I've got a good story or when I've achieved X, Y, Z. Actually, every story counts. This is a show that really celebrates every journey, every background, every perspective, because you will resonate or someone will resonate with you. It's not just all about the gold medalists and, those leaders on, board of directors. It's about everyone's journey. So along that, okay, when we speak about journey, we speak a lot about women's empowerment, about self-care, self-love. And sometimes it sounds really like soft. It sounds really like, well, in business, you start to feel a lot about, you start to talk a lot about your masculine and your feminine energy. And often, even the feminine looking type business actually came from a very masculine energy. Like, for example, the whole business boss babe energy, right? That came from like a very a way of kind of trying to be like the men, but in a feminine style. But actually, it meant that a lot of women were working in a very, in a very masculine way. That's the only other way I can explain it. In like high powered, high energy. It's all about the numbers, all about the figures, all about being really like top of your game. And it actually didn't allow for much nurture and care and flexibility and working with our cycles, and actually we just forgot a little bit, or maybe some have forgotten a little bit, how to kind of work with their energy, right? Now, I'm not an expert in it. I love it. I do a lot of practice. I practice spirituality or my religion, or I go to yoga therapy, or I do yoga, and I am interested in it, and I've learned so much about myself. But I thought I would invite a specialist on the show today about inner power and about female empowerment and what that actually means in business and how we can bring that into our daily lives. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to today's Money Honey, who is the wonderful Sherisse Bisram, who is on the show with us today. And if you are sticking around, remember to subscribe so that you can support the show, but also be notified of the next upcoming show. So remember to stick around. If you want to be in this community, please click that button so that we can keep growing the show and keep the show active as much as possible. So handing over to Sherisse, how are
Hey,
you
thank you
today?
so much for having me. And
Oh,
such an important topic for us as women in business to be, speaking about today. Because as you said, so many women have hustled their way to success. And as you said, doing it the masculine way. And I think so many women don't even realize that their nervous systems are in shambles because they're just not supposed to run their business that way. And that's why, for me, it's so important to teach divine feminine leadership, which literally means we're moving from our natural rhythms and this energy of like empathy and understanding of ourselves and each other, that compassion, this we're thinking about humans from a human level but also a soul level. And I know that that's quite woo woo, and I probably will go quite woo woo as we go on, but I think if you're someone that's not partial to woo woo ness, it literally means that instead of powering over people, you're powering to people. And I think that that only really comes when you truly own your power, your worth, and understand yourself. So it really is about that ever famous saying, like, so within, so without. So how you feel about yourself is ultimately what is going to manifest in your exterior. And that goes for how you run your team and how you do everything in life. So yeah, this real my title is Inner Power Activation Leader and Intuitive Healer, because it's that combination, like you said, of that feminine and masculine, of the mind, the body, the soul, everything intertwines.
now, I am very keen in getting stuck into this episode because it is such an important topic when working, when you're running a business. It comes with, its own responsibilities, right? You've got people working for you, etc. So you said that your journey came from pain to power, and you overcame childhood trauma and grief. Are you happy to share a little bit about that? Because you told me about this offline in your introduction, but why don't we start from why you do what you do today and where that
Yeah,
came from?
absolutely. I mean, this is my legacy, right? It's my journey and the reason I do what I do. So, to give you a really brief summary, I grew up in a volatile household. One of my parents was an addict, and I also grew up in an area that wasn't culturally diverse. So, not only did I have that volatility inside of my home, but everywhere I went, walking to school, I'd have people wind down their windows and shout out racism and all of those things. And I would say that I chose not to be bullied. And I know that that's quite a controversial thing to say, but in my life, I'd witnessed one parent be a victim. And I remember having a conversation with myself about 6 years old, just saying that I'll never let anyone treat me like that. And so from that point on, that was really my first layer of armor that I put on to protect those around me that I loved and myself, right? And so I would be, holding my other parent back from attacking the other one or my sister. And then, when I was faced with racism, walking home from school and things like that, I would literally shout back because I think I've always known that I was a cycle breaker. And so anytime someone, any adversity or any time where I've seen someone go to bully another person, my natural reaction is to intervene. Now, I do astrology within my work, and I'm a Leo sun and Leo rising. That means I'm full of fire. So I literally cannot stand for injustice in any form. So I can't help but speak out. And that for me was a blessing and a curse at the time. But what I know for sure is, even when things were hard and I was in survival mode, I've still always owned my power because of that thing, that I'd never wanted to be a victim. I never wanted anyone to feel like they owned me or controlled me. But the irony of it was that in a bid of not wanting to be a victim, I was actually caging my own emotions within. And so if we fast forward to between the ages of 12 to 17, I had 11 members of my family die back to back, one of which was my addict parent. And so that period of grief was a literal scenario of adding on more layers of armor over and over again. I don't know about you, but was always told to be strong. So I took that literally. I was like, oh, okay. And I'm the eldest daughter. So I thought that that was my responsibility to be strong. And especially when the masculine energy within my family dynamic had never been prevalent. Like, the women in my family were always the ones that were doing everything. And so I just felt like it was my responsibility to protect. And that same energy of surviving through those times, as well as then going on to be a professional dancer and being in the point in the industry where it wasn't, again, culturally diverse enough yet, just I had to be resilient because there was no other way. But that, again, like I said, is the blessing and the curse, because it's almost like it gave me the reason to push, you know? That was like the fuel to my fire, was that I never saw anyone that looked like me doing it. So I had to be first, you know? Even in my family, that strong feminine energy of not wanting to be passive in a situation, that was again me owning that title and saying, okay, I'm going to be the strong one. And I wore it as a badge of honor. And then that really sort of sailed me through to my mid-20s. And then, you know, I was having like a series of constant things that were hard in my life happening back to back, financial losses and going to uni, my car always breaking down, and just I was manifesting bad things over and over again because it was all I ever saw. And then there was a point where I'd got back from a job in abroad as a dancer, and the owner was trying to sleep with the young girls. And again, I was like, no, not standing for that, coming home. And it was at that point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, something isn't right here. And that was the first time where I'd kind of taken accountability for myself and sort of said, I think I'm the problem. And so I found like the law of attraction and the secret and all of that stuff. And I started to realize that, oh, I can actually start to kind of use this connection to the universe to help me a little bit more. So I started to get back into journaling then. And funny enough, I journaled my whole life because one of my aunts was really big on it and she recommended it to me. And actually now I can see that the constant dancing, the different groups that I was in, and the journaling kept me afloat. Whereas my sister didn't have any practices and tools, and her life went a full circle back to the life that we had growing up because she didn't have any regulation. And we talk about it now quite openly. She's come out the other side of some real difficult things again. But now we know more. Obviously, we do better, right? And that's really been my journey at that point. So I started to implement little things and be aware of, like, you know, how the role I play in my life. And then things started to go well. And I was like, okay, this is great. But then I got to the pandemic when, and funny enough, the job before the pandemic was the biggest job I'd ever got as a dancer. I was in the Marvel movie, The Eternals. And yeah, it was the one that I'd had on the bucket list. And it was incredible to say, but doing it felt empty. And I know that so many high achieving women feel this. You know, you finally hit that, whether it's a monetary goal or the house or the partner, but inside feels empty. And it's because we haven't built that success from the inside out. We've built it from the outside in. You know, all the hustle, all the proving, all the forcing to get ourselves there. So when we do get there, it's hollow, right? And that's really what I called my confidence at that time, was a glass house. Because the minute something hard happened again, I would crumble. But internally, I'd have this like force of like, everything's good, I'm fine, I'm strong, you know. And as that kind of, we sifted into the lockdown, I was having more conversations about vulnerability. And then I dated a guy literally in the lockdown phase. And one of my aunts said to me, he ended it and it was really vulnerable and like, you know, open. And I just couldn't take it. I was like, oh, vulnerability, oh. And I was like, I said to my aunt about it, she's a foster care, and she said, the reason you find that so irritating is because you've never been vulnerable in your life. And I was like, oh. So that really was the knock-on effects in my life, where I realised my whole life I'd lived like a man, in masculine force, in proving, in pushing, in forcing my way into everything that I created for myself. That's why it felt so hollow, because women aren't supposed to sustain that energy. We're supposed to flow. There was no element for flow in my life. And I know I was a dancer, but again, that was another pedestal that I'd put myself on, or something I was working towards to show people, to prove to people I was worthy. So at that point in the lockdown, I chose to go in. And, you know, as a dancer that has nowhere to dance in a pandemic, I mean, what do you do, right? So I then thought, right, I'm going to go into doing my master's degree. And
I thought you were going to say
oh no,
dancing on TikTok.
no,
Oh,
no,
that's what I did.
X. I was against it. I was against TikTok at the time, and yeah, I went into doing my master's degree. So I was like, what else am I going to do? You know, at the time I was pushing 30, and I was thinking, wow, I'm getting a bit old now. Like, maybe actually the dreams that I'd had for myself as a dancer, I wanted to move to LA. Had all the meetings booked with the attorneys, and again we couldn't travel. And yeah, doing the masters was like a massive initiation, because And by the way, that was 10 years after I'd done my previous degree. So I had no idea what I was doing. Again, another, for me, obstacle of thinking, right, I'm going to do this thing, you know. And what was really powerful was I went into the masters with the intention of focusing on female empowerment, which I did. But the studies I was finding, the case studies, were all around children in care. And when I was looking at that data, I was then being shown the mirror to my own life. And I was like wondering, like, why did this girl go and care for that? Like, why was it? That was just normal for me. And then I came across the test called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that test because that clearly is what keeps coming up in the data. And I scored 8 out of 10. Now, that's not a test you want to score high on, but that awareness of what that was then opened the door to the understanding that I'd experienced childhood trauma. And from there, I got to deep dive all the way in and understand what had happened to me. Because once we understand it, we can then accept it and then release the parts of our story that no longer serve us, you know, those limiting beliefs, you know, maybe it's around money, maybe it's around family dynamics, you know, the armor that I was carrying, you know, that proving, that forcing just crumbled. And I was like, right, it's time to be vulnerable now. It's time to lead with my soul and figure out what that really looks like. And I'm not going to lie, in this period of time, I was mush. You know, I was absolute mush and I've never let myself feel before. So really, I would say that the pandemic was a blessing for me because it gave me the chance to take down this ivory tower that I'd built that was false, to actually then create new foundations of real deep strength, and not from a place of toxic strength, but like roots. You know, like if we think about a tree and how that's organic and that's everlasting, you know, these oak trees last for hundreds of years. And I would say that when you build a foundation on that from a space of real deep love and understanding of yourself, those roots continue to grow as far and deep as, and wide as they need to. But your trunk and, you know, the flowers on top continue to reach high up into the highest point of the universe because you're interconnected then, right? And that's exactly what happened as I began to heal and understand and accept myself more, and I was rebuilding, like all of these spiritual gifts began to come online, and I started to tell my story, and then people were connecting with me. So then what happened was, you know, and it was ugly in between. I'm not going to pretend that you go on your spiritual journey and it's all butterflies everywhere. It's not. But the richness of life that I feel now and what I lead my clients through is ultimately what is the richness of life that people are searching for. You know, people are always saying to you, oh, I feel stuck, or I'm trying to find my spark. Your spark is found in the darkest of moments, right? That's why I say pain to power, darkness to light, alchemy, because you have to alchemize something. But if you're bypassing the fact that you have pain or that you've been through some hard stuff and you're still trying to run over it, you won't get to alchemize it. And so many people are just existing in life and not fully living as a result of being in that autopilot state.
What if you haven't been through anything traumatic like that? You know, like I genuinely, and I am always putting myself in this situation, guys, in my question, because I want to be, you know, I wouldn't want anyone to talk about something that I wouldn't talk about myself, right? And not everyone wants to talk about this stuff. So I'm happy to put myself vulnerable. I did an episode earlier, Sherisse, where I actually did a live deal analysis with someone on the show, and I put my own deal on the line. And now I'm going to put my own vulnerability or background on the line as well. And I'll just quite openly say that I am very lucky and very blessed to have had the kind of upbringing and story you would want, that fairy tales, right? Even better than fairy tales, because fairy tales are unrealistic. As in, I have had the best parents, the best upbringing, the loveliest sibling. I've never had anything happen to me, anything ever traumatic. So, where does the drive and the feeling of imposter syndrome and the feeling of I'm not worthy enough and the feeling of I haven't even done enough, like with why am I so yellow, like why am I constantly trying to be yellow and like really loud and really, like I've done the dancing, I was a dancer as well, like going on stage, being on the mic, I love a microphone, and like even when I'm in the wings waiting for like a speaker to stop speaking and I'm next, everyone's like, are you nervous? I'm like, I'm nervous because I'm not on stage. I was like, once I'm on stage, I'll be great. But I was like, I just need them to get on, So where did that come from then? I don't feel like I feel like I'm doing a lot, but then I'm not doing
Mm.
enough.
Well, the thing is, fear is a normal reaction, right? I mean, I think I've obviously had a lot of adverse situations in my life, but if you look back into your own life of moments where, maybe it was a performance when you were younger and one of the teachers said to you then, oh, you need to do better, or you're being compared to the person that was the star, for example, and that all happened, it would be these small little things that add up. So although it might not seem a lot when you compare it to mine, which I don't recommend anyone does, by the way, don't compare yourself to anyone else. But when my clients come to me, a lot of them say, oh, I haven't been through what you've been through. And then when we unpack actually their journey, it could just be the fact that they wasn't shown um, actual touch as a young person. So maybe their parents didn't hug them, and that little inkling comes from it. Or it could be a relationship they had with a partner, and then the partner said one thing and it stuck with us. Like our brains are neuroplasticity. So yes, if you've had great childhood experiences, that's amazing. You're bypassing. I don't say bypassing. You're skipping a part where you're crumbling, you're not needing to crumble, but at the same time you're susceptible to these hard things, and every one of us has been shaped by something. And it could even be that you're just comparing yourself to other speakers or other performers, and it could be those little things, other business owners. It doesn't even have to be a big like traumatic event. It's just life, and that's the way the patriarchy unfortunately has shaped it, that women compete and compare.
Yeah, that definitely does happen, especially like in the marketing space. Looking at, oh, they've got more followers than me, or that one's a bigger channel than mine, and that is the vanity metrics,
Mm,
if you like, of what other people perceive as successful. And I've done so many videos where I've said, don't assume that someone on 1 million followers is earning more than you and is having a happier
mm,
life than you, and don't underestimate someone's got 100 followers and actually aren't worthy of saying anything. Do
yeah.
you see what I mean? So, I consciously get that. But let's just really turn our attention to what probably 99.9% of people I know listening to this channel, I can hear them right now. The biggest thing they're struggling with is imposter syndrome. And it will come in the form of, who the hell do I think I am? And therefore I'm not even going to try because no one's going to want to listen from little to little old me. And then the other opposite end of the spectrum is someone who is really visible, really success. Like, well, everyone else is like, oh, you're smashing it, you're amazing, oh my god, we look up to you. And then they're going home thinking, I'm going to be discovered that I am an absolute fraudster. So there's those two voices that I can hear. So what message would you say to them listening here today? Because I want them to make this the episode that really, no pressure, but makes this the episode that they think, oh my gosh, I once heard that. And there's just their heart just opens up.
Well, it's the same for both. And it really is that you're so busy looking at everything else and you're not thinking about how it feels to you, like that. What success means to you is the biggest thing that you can give yourself, because really and truly, if you only ever wanted to have a happy, healthy family and the business came as a byproduct and now you're doing it and it's flowing, if you're already in your wish fulfilled, what else do you need to prove? Because success looks different on everyone. And the moment that we go into that cycle of comparing ourselves to other people is the minute you give your power away. And I always talk about calling your power back to yourself. At any moment, at any time, you can literally just put your hand on your chest, close your eyes if you want to, and just say, I call my power back to me. Because that is just so important. Like the moment you compare yourself to someone else is you're giving your power away to other people, and especially to followers. Like, I love having people that, tell me that I'm doing great or that I've inspired them. That's so wonderful. But I'm doing this journey for little me. I'm doing it for her because she didn't see anyone growing up that looked like her, or she didn't come from a cycle or a generation of family that really ever done this or was truly successful in her eyes. So I'm doing it for her. And I want you to ask yourself that question right now, whoever's listening, like, why am I doing it and who am I doing it for? Maybe it's that your family legacy You want to create a cycle of generational wealth, and you're now deciding that actually I want my children to live the life that I never had. Find out what your why is. Why am I doing this? What does success look like for me? And am I living to that, or am I living to someone else's success and desires? Because that really is, again, where you hone in on the you, and everything feeds out from how you feel about you. And that's what I keep saying. Your whole reality and your whole world and your whole universe connects with how you feel about you. So doing that inner work, diving into yourself, is the biggest reward you will ever do. And I promise you now, with all of my clients by far that have worked with me, their family, their friends, their partners have all benefited from me doing the work for them, because their light is now shining out onto everyone around them and inspiring them. This is why all of your energy and focus, your cup needs to be full and overflowing, so you can then pour out onto other people. Instead of going out first, it's like from within, you sow without.
I mean, that is a pretty special sign off message right there. And maybe this is an opportunity for the guests to maybe ask for you to come back, because I know today was a short and sweet one given our time constraints. And I'm so sorry. Thank you for being here and really honouring me with your time for 25 minutes. I mean, these episodes are usually 30 minutes anyway, but I really just wanted to give a little, sow the seed, but maybe have you back at some point, because if we get some questions from the audience, I know that imposter syndrome is one of the biggest things that people struggle with. But you've already in this episode, for anyone who missed it, didn't catch it, and you want to go through it one more time, if you really listen to what Sherisse has said, that you only need a minute of this episode to really change your life. And the minute for me, to sum it up in a minute, is you said, anytime you are feeling any sense of self, and correct me if I'm summarizing it incorrectly, but anytime that you're feeling a sense of self-doubt, insecurity or shame or guilt, or you're comparing yourself to someone else, you've given away your power. And that for me is the best summary I could have ever heard today. That why, when I've woken up next to the man of my dreams in a house that keeps us safe, secure and sheltered, and then we have breakfast together, I wake up happy, and then all of a sudden someone or something happens, or someone does something, and I've given away my power, because I'm like, oh, they've done that and I haven't, and that is the power that I've been given away. So ask yourself, after listening to this episode, everybody, how are you giving your power away every day? Did you do something that you were proud of, and then you just actually belittled it, but because you compared it to somebody else? So thank you, Sherisse. How can people find you if they want to absorb more of this power and energy and, your
Yes, thank you
vibes?
so much. And I'm really glad that it's resonated deeply. And this is all my vibe 100%. So, yes, please come and find me. I'm on Instagram, TikTok. I've also have a podcast called Permission to Shine, but my sort of tag is at Sherisse_Bisram. But yeah, I'm always up for conversations as well. If anyone wants to talk to me about all of this stuff in more detail, or even your star sign or what you're going through, this is all my space for women and girls.
Honestly, that's been such a beautiful ending to my Friday, and hopefully a beautiful start to everybody's weekend when this is released. So thank you everybody for tuning in. If this episode really changed, like instigated a spark or changed something in you, please don't hold it back from anybody else, because somebody else might just need to hear this message today. So please share it with those people that you feel could benefit. And remember to subscribe so I can see you next week, next Friday, on the next show.